Hi, everyone. Welcome back to CAHS Career Prep, where we talk all about how to get you ready for a career in arts, humanities, and social sciences. I'm Nicole McDavid, and in today's episode, we're talking all about portfolio and website creation. And to discuss this topic, we have professional Tom Patterson here with us today. Thank you so much for coming, Tom.
Of course.
Tom is currently a web and digital designer with Media Fusion here in Huntsville. He has been building websites for the last 20 years using everything from Dreamweaver and Flash to WordPress and, is it Magento?
Magento.
I'm going to just say right now, I thought it was Magento, and I was practicing this last night, and both of my boys were like, I think it's Magneto. And I'm pretty sure they got that from some sort of animated film. He has run design and development teams for a small agency as well as Adtran here in Huntsville. He also has worked as a creative director in multiple positions, including tech startups, and as a freelance project manager. And so we're so excited to talk with you about portfolio and website creation.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the purpose of creating a website or portfolio. Why would this be helpful for students?
Yeah, so, a design portfolio is a representation of your skill sets, right? And if you're looking to showcase your skill sets, there's no better way, of course, than to have a portfolio. And a lot of times when we were hiring junior designers, we would look at portfolios before we would look at resumes, because I think they're that important, especially for a design standpoint, whether you're UX or you're into video or you're just a straight print designer. That portfolio is going to be the key to kind of showing what you're able to do and how you're able to problem solve. Graphic designers, all designers should be good storytellers. And you need to be able to convey those stories, and the way you do that and showcase that is through a good design portfolio.
That's great. When students are going to create it, I think one of the questions that I've had students ask in the past is, when they're creating that portfolio, are there advantages or disadvantages to having it online, or should they have things that are printed out? How should they think about putting that together?
Yeah, I really think, well, first, I think online is really the way to go now. And there's plenty of different places that you can go to help you build these portfolios. Behance through Adobe. There's one called Dribble, I think. And obviously, if you're a web designer, you could probably look at doing a WordPress site that has themes that are already built for designers and portfolios. Wix is a really great one. But if you're trying to showcase your design or your web design skills, then probably using something like Wix wouldn't be the way to go, because you want to be able to show that you're using a platform that's a little more robust and not just kind of cookie cutter, out of the box. But I think that having a printed portfolio could be good too when you're actually in the interview, right? And there's things that you might be able to show a little bit better in person and on paper. And it really depends on the position that you're going for, right? So we talked about this at UAH a couple of weeks ago, where your resume should change depending on the job you're trying to get. Right. I think it's very similar to a portfolio. If you're looking for a UX UI job, then obviously having a portfolio that's mainly about website development might not be the way to go, right? So you want to change a little bit, maybe focus on the things that you're actually that are associated to that position that you're trying to get. So I think your portfolio should change. Your obviously your resume should change, and then if you bring a printed portfolio, have that change up depending on the position.
Okay, that's great advice for students. Is there anything style-wise that you would recommend for a portfolio that would help it to maybe stand out?
Again, the different positions you're going for, they're going to be looking for different things.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing you should try to do is keep it simplicity. I think the biggest thing is you want to have a good user experience, obviously, and part of that user experience is that your portfolio loads fast and that it's easy to navigate. And so one particular style over another doesn't make sense to me, but having it functional, having it fast, and having it easy to navigate, intuitively navigation, would be the way I would say to approach having a good portfolio.
Okay.
Especially online, yeah.
Yeah. I have had several students, especially students who are in areas of graphic design, that have created their own websites as part of kind of that process going through. What would be the difference in students' kind of work that they're sharing between that website and that portfolio? Or is it the same?
Yeah. So if you're talking about going for a position that is a web development position, right, you want to showcase some of those chops, right? Having a website that is easy to navigate, that loads fast, is already showing them that you know how to build a site that loads fast, that is easy to navigate, that has content above the fold that helps them identify exactly what type of designer you are right off the bat. And then, generally you want to showcase some other websites you've built. So there could be some linking over to some other websites that you've developed. And if you don't have a long client list, then you can build a few websites that have different styles to them and showcase different. This one's about, a coffee shop, and I can see how I can build this for a retail store. Or here's one that's for a commercial, real estate agency. So I have some different, breadths in my work, right? So I think they might be a little bit one and the same. So they come to the site, it works, it navigates. You're already showing that you can build a site. And second, your portfolio is easy to navigate so they can see your work and make it make sense.
Okay, that's great. For creation of that website, another question that I've had in the past is, when they're creating that content, how much of that content needs to be specifically developed on their own? So things as far as images, illustrations, different, areas that they're putting into that. How much of that should be their own? How much of it is acceptable to even have things like stock images? How do they kind of navigate that creation?
Yeah, so everything you show should be generally your work.
Right.
I mean, obviously, but a lot of a lot of employers are looking for a sense that you can collaborate with other designers. Very often, you will be put into a position where you're working with a team, and I think they want to be able to see generally that you can collaborate and you can work with other designers to finish a project that needs to be finished. So I think there's not an issue with showing a project where there's multiple people working on it and showing your part, but I think it's very important to call out, this is the part that I did. Right. Here's the parts that I didn't do. So you're not misrepresenting, the work that you did in that. But I think you can show other illustrations. I don't have a problem with stock photography. I think good stock photography doesn't look like stock photography.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you use photography in the right way, if you add elements to it, if you say on my site, my accent color is green.
Okay.
So I'm a green fan, so everything I do is in green. But what I would do is, if I took a stock photograph, I might put some green elements into it.
Okay.
Which now I kind of made it my own, and I did some work to it. Now it doesn't feel so stocky, right? So and you can call that out or not, or if you make it just obvious that every single one of the images that you're using in a certain area, they have that same tint or that same hue, and you can say they all go together. There's a way to kind of overcome some of that stock sort of area. But I think the main thing is people want to see your process.
Okay.
They want to be able to see that you're a problem solver. They want to see everything from the research that you did for a project, the ideation, the work you put in, the iterations, and then the final product. They want to see that step by step, because they want to be able to put you into another project and you use those same steps to kind of successfully finish a project. So I think the big thing with portfolios is seeing that process, showing that process. And then, another big thing is like case studies. Write case studies about your projects. Write about what the process was. Who were the other players in the project? What tools you used. I used Illustrator and Photoshop and After Effects or whatever. And you say all the things that you use so they get a sense of how your process goes and how your workflow is and how you can successfully finish a project.
I think that's great. And that would be so helpful, especially when you're going into that job setting for the first time, to really have that information of, helping them see kind of this is how I'm working through these different steps to get to this final project, because it really gives the employer more insight about that for sure.
Yeah, they're looking for a culture fit. They're
Yeah.
looking for collaborators. They're looking for people who can work well with everybody in the organization in order to get something done. So showing that process kind of demonstrates that that collaboration and the ability to problem solve and to finish projects. So I think it's key.
Yeah. I remember from the talk that you all did at UAH a few weeks ago that you mentioned this, but I wanted to kind of circle back to it because I think this is a really important question that students have, especially in the areas of art and art design. For the resume itself, there are so many different examples of resumes out there, and there's resumes that have pictures on them, and there's resumes that have huge blocks of color.
Sure.
And I think that's something that students, when they're going into these areas of art design, it's difficult for them to navigate. Okay, I've have my portfolio, but what should I make the resume look like? So do you have a little bit of insight that you could share with kind of what are some best practices for creating that website or creating the creating the resume for the students?
Yeah, I think the consensus in that talk was it should look as plain as possible. I think we kind of all came away saying, agreeing the same thing, is it should look like this.
Yeah.
Very just text, keep it a one-pager, and let your portfolio, especially if you're a designer, let your portfolio do its talking for you, right? Everything else should be very straightforward, very matter of fact. I don't think there's a necessity to stand out on a resume. I think, again, you do that through your portfolio, you do that through the interview process. I think the resume is better simple, clean and easy to read, and gets right to the point, only has relevant information. So I think keep it simple is the way to go. Not keep it stupid. Cut that out. Keep it simple, I think, is really the way to go through that, because you don't want to try to do too much in a resume. Let the portfolio speak for itself. Yeah.
And with so many of the online things that we have now for resumes, LinkedIn is always one of the ones that we kind of go back to and talk about of students using and helping. So how can students use LinkedIn effectively to kind of connect in their portfolio, their website, the resume work they're doing? Are there different ways that they can highlight that other than, obviously they'd have the links on there to share, but are there certain things they could do to maybe highlight it, get attention of companies?
Yeah, so obviously LinkedIn is about networking, about getting in front of as many people as possible, especially if you're doing job searching. LinkedIn has a lot of cool aspects to it where you can showcase your skill sets. You can sit there and click off how many Adobe Suite products you know and how long you've been using them. And I have, I think at each one of my jobs, I put samples of my work from those jobs within the LinkedIn page.
Oh, okay.
So anybody could go back to my work with Tango Tango or AdTran and see the work I did for them, just some portfolios in there. And of course, I do have a link to my portfolio and a link to Behance and some of the other website work I've done. LinkedIn is really robust. You should really get in there and utilize it as much as you possibly can. Put as much information as you think is relevant on it. And just network. Get out there and try to connect with other people, connect with other designers, connect with creative directors, because those are the guys usually hiring, and then try to connect with other design groups, I think is key. I think LinkedIn's a really good platform to, it can't be, I wouldn't say it's the only thing you should do, but I think it's one of the main ones if you're trying to network and looking for, a job. Yeah.
That's great. So I want to go a little bit off of some of the questions I had, because this came to my mind as we were talking. Okay. And I think this is something that, especially for our students as they're going into that first job or working to get that first job, especially in the areas of art design, graphic design, when they're going to work for a company, and so they have that company that's interested, what are some things that they can do that can help to make sure that they're matching what the company's needs are, but also staying true to kind of what their brand is as a designer. Kind of how do they, for lack of a better word, kind of meld that those two things together.
Yeah, so I think it's the same approach you would take to a design project, which is research.
Okay.
Do some research. If you're really interested in working for a company, do some research on that company. Find out the details around it. If they have a brand style guide, find it, look at it, see what fonts they use, see their color palettes. Just become familiar with it. That way, in the interview process, you kind of have a sense of their culture, and again, it's kind of dependent on the position and the job and the company and maybe even the hiring person. But being able to connect with them because you share values or you share core beliefs. And you can get that if you just do enough research. You can find out what a company's mission statement is and what their vision is and what their brand identity is, their voice. And if you can start taking that in, you'll get a better understanding of what they're really concerned about. So in your interview process, if there's a company that's really concerned about and the environment, then you want to play that angle up, and say maybe you've done some pro bono work for, a local organization. Make sure that's front and center, because now you know that you guys have a connection between this core principle or value that you might have. So I'd say just doing as much research as you can, and just preparing yourself. These are, the job market out there is crazy, and especially with remote positions coming open, means the competition is that much more is that much larger, and you have to you're really competing against the world now, and not just your local whatever, especially if you want to be a remote. Because I think that's the way we're kind of moving. I know designers, they love being remote. I mean, some like to be in office settings, but I think it's more of a 70-30 mix on that one, and it might even be getting more toward remote work later on. But so you're really competing with a lot of people, and you really need to connect beyond your your resume, beyond your portfolio. And like you were saying, how do you sort of make sure that you're feeling like you're going to be a good culture fit, and you're going to be able to work within that organization, and just doing as much research as you can kind of gives you a leg up on that, I think.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming today. Do you have any other advice that you'd want to share for our students as they, go through their college career, things that will help them get portfolio or website ready? Any kind of last thoughts you'd like to leave with them?
Yeah, I mean, just network, get out there and meet other designers. Find multiple favorite designers that you have, local and non-local, right? And talk to them. And just join groups and build out case studies. I think case studies are big. I think just whatever project you've done in school or outside of school, make it a big thing. Like if you did a website, or you build some packaging for a particular product, show the whole process. Show your sticky tab, your sticky notes, and show that as a step-by-step guide of your process and how you work, and showcase that. So and also just don't stop learning, right? Because I know probably 5 or 6 Adobe software as an expert. I probably could learn 10 more, and I just don't have enough time, and I focus on certain things. But keep learning, get out there. If you haven't done any animation, take an animation class. There, you can get them for free. You can find them on YouTube. But keep learning, keep growing your skill sets, and then continually update that portfolio. Don't let it sit for years and then have to go back and try to scramble if something happens to your position. Make sure you're updating it on a constant basis. That way, if something happens, you have a portfolio that's ready to go. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. And I think that was one of the things, especially for me, when I started early on in my career, that I really didn't think about, and then as I progressed, got very aware of that.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be writing these things down when I'm doing these different things. I need to actually be adding it into my resume, adding it into my LinkedIn, the things that I'm doing. I think that's so incredibly important. And especially now that we have ways that we can very easily do those updates now. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And so I think that's a great way to just kind of keep yourself in the mix and kind of think about networking as a continual process. It's not like a one-time networking, you get a job and you never do it again, but kind of getting comfortable with that continual networking because it really does expand your opportunities.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, so thank you so much for being here today, Tom. And we would also like to thank our sponsor, Blue Summit Supplies, for the wonderful facility that we are in and the resources to make this recording possible. A special thank you to our assistant media writer and researcher, Macy Morgan, video producer and editor, Jesse Hendricks, and producer, Grace Frutel. I'm your host, Nicole McDavid, and we'll see you next time for more CAHS Career Prep.